Along Europe's eastern frontier, a strange new wall is rising. It is not made of stone or steel, but of drones buzzing through the night sky, radar towers casting invisible nets, and electronic warfare systems humming as they scan the horizon. From the forests of Finland to the flat plains of Poland, this drone wall is being built as the last line of defense against the one threat that keeps European leaders awake at night: Russia. The urgency is born of fear. Every evening in Ukraine, sirens wail as swarms of Iranian-made Shahed drones, launched by Moscow, descend on power plants, cities, and military targets. These cheap machines, costing a fraction of a missile, slip past defenses in the dozens. They crash into apartment blocks, explode over fuel depots, and shatter lives with terrifying regularity. Europe has watched this nightmare unfold on its doorstep, and the lesson is brutal. If Moscow chose to unleash the same tactics against NATO states, the skies of Vilnius, Warsaw, or Helsinki could look just like Kiev's. That is why European leaders have chosen a radical step. They are building a shield across the continent's exposed edge, a vast and unbroken barrier of sensors, interceptors, and drones designed to detect and destroy incoming threats before they ever reach European cities. Billions of euros have been pledged. Engineers work around the clock. Politicians speak of a 21st-century fortress to protect Europe from the swarm. But beneath the speeches lies a haunting truth. No one knows if it will work. Drone warfare is evolving faster than defense systems can adapt. Russia is experimenting with swarms guided by artificial intelligence, drones that can jam communications, drones that can overwhelm radars by sheer mass. Europe's wall may stand tall today, but can it withstand the storms of tomorrow? Where are you watching this from right now? Tell us, because the building of this wall is not just about Europe, it is about the future of security in a world where the sky itself has become the battlefield. And if you want to understand how close we may be to the next great clash, stay with us, because this is only the beginning. The idea of a drone wall did not appear overnight. It was born in the first months of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, when Europe's leaders began to see a terrifying pattern. Night after night, swarms of Shahed drones, cheap, slow, but deadly, poured across Ukrainian skies. Sometimes dozens at a time, sometimes more than 100. They targeted electrical grids, ammunition depots, bridges, and civilian neighborhoods. Each one cost Iran and Russia perhaps $20,000 or $30,000 to build. To shoot them down, Ukraine often had to use surface-to-air missiles worth millions. The math was unsustainable. European capitals watched closely. In Vilnius and Tallinn, in Warsaw and Helsinki, security briefings began to sound the same alarm. What if these swarms were aimed not at Kiev, but at us? What if Russian drones appeared over the Suwałki Gap, that fragile corridor linking Poland to the Baltic states? What if they came screaming toward Helsinki, Riga, or even Berlin? Unlike tanks or infantry, drones ignored borders. They could appear anywhere, in minutes. That fear hardened into strategy. In 2023 and 2024, defense ministers from Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, Poland, and Finland began meeting regularly, sketching out what would become the drone wall. The concept was bold but simple. Create a seamless shield across the European Union's eastern edge. It would not be a static wall of concrete, but a living barrier of technology, detection towers, electronic jammers, interceptor drones, and mobile batteries ready to respond instantly. For the Baltic states, the memory of occupation by Moscow made the urgency visceral. For Poland, the war in Ukraine was already too close for comfort. Finland, newly inside NATO, carried centuries of history fighting Russian aggression. Together, they pushed Brussels to think beyond temporary measures. Europe, they argued, needed something permanent, a line that Moscow would never dare cross. Billions of euros were earmarked. Germany pledged funding. The Nordic countries contributed their technological expertise. Drone manufacturers across Europe were tasked with scaling up production. The goal was staggering: a shield stretching thousands of kilometers, covering forests, rivers, mountains, and plains. But from the very beginning, critics asked the question that still hangs in the air: could such a project ever truly be finished? Technology changes fast. Drones evolve month by month. What Europe builds today may already be outdated tomorrow. Yet for leaders staring eastward at a Russia willing to launch waves of machines against civilian targets, there was no choice. Better an imperfect wall than no wall at all. And so the construction began, quietly at first, then loudly, with speeches declaring a new era of European defense. But even as the first towers rose and the first interceptor drones were tested, the whispers continued. Would this drone wall hold when Moscow finally put it to the test? At its core, the drone wall is not a single structure, but a layered system, a network designed to see, jam, and kill hostile drones before they can ever reach their targets. Along Europe's eastern edge, radar towers are rising like sentinels, sweeping the skies with invisible beams capable of spotting even small, low-flying drones moving at night. These radars are tied into a digital backbone, feeding data into command centers where operators can track threats in real time. But detection alone is not enough. Once the alarms sound, the wall's second line of defense activates: electronic warfare. Powerful jammers pulse across the battlefield, cutting communications, scrambling navigation systems, and forcing enemy drones to crash or drift off course. Some systems are portable, mounted on trucks or carried by troops, ready to be deployed wherever a breach appears. Others are fixed, humming constantly along the frontier, creating invisible bubbles of protection. Beyond that lie the interceptors, the kill layer of the wall. In some areas, Europe is deploying lasers, beams of concentrated energy capable of burning drones out of the sky in seconds. Elsewhere, rapid-fire guns and missiles stand ready to shred incoming waves. But perhaps the most innovative element is Europe's own swarm. Hunter drones designed to track and ram intruders mid-air, meeting them in fast, swirling duels above the forests and plains. Taken together, it looks less like a wall and more like a living organism, adapting in real time to the threats it faces. The ambition is staggering: a shield stretching thousands of kilometers, covering the skies of Finland, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, and beyond. Every inch of frontier protected, every city behind it given precious minutes to respond. Billions of euros are being poured into the project. German industry supplies advanced optics and sensors. Nordic firms specialize in counter-drone AI, teaching machines to recognize enemy flight patterns in milliseconds. Polish and Baltic companies are building mobile platforms to keep the wall flexible and responsive. The EU's Defense Fund has turned the project into one of the most expensive joint ventures in Europe's history. Yet, for all the optimism, doubts persist. Military analysts whisper that no wall can be perfect. Russia's drones are cheap, disposable, and evolving quickly. Some are now fitted with hardened electronics to resist jamming. Others fly in coordinated swarms, overwhelming defenses by sheer mass. Can Europe's high-tech wall, expensive and complex, really stand against Moscow's relentless tide of cheap machines? The answer remains uncertain. For now, the wall hums with energy, a vast and glowing barrier built on the hope that preparation can buy safety. But in the east, Russia watches, waiting, and no one doubts that sooner or later the drone wall will face its first true test. Every night in Ukraine, the shadow of Moscow's drone war spreads across the sky. Sirens wail in Kyiv, Odessa, and Kharkiv as swarms of Shahed drones, supplied by Iran and modified by Russian engineers, descend in waves. Sometimes they come in groups of 20, sometimes 100, flying low to avoid radar, hugging rivers and valleys until they appear suddenly above their targets. They strike power stations, fuel depots, ammunition warehouses, and apartment blocks. The explosions ripple across the night, leaving craters in the ground and fear in the air. For Russia, drones have become the perfect weapon of attrition. They are cheap to build, assembled in factories in Tatarstan and across occupied Ukraine, and cost a fraction of the missiles needed to stop them. Every interception drains Ukraine's air defenses, forcing Kyiv to spend millions to destroy machines that cost only thousands. The strategy is brutal, but effective. Overwhelm the defender, exhaust their resources, and make the sky itself feel unsafe. It is this reality that terrifies Europe. Leaders in Vilnius, Riga, and Warsaw see themselves in Ukraine's nightly battles. If Moscow unleashed the same tactics against NATO's frontier, hundreds of drones could pour into European skies within hours. They wouldn't need to destroy every target. Hitting even a handful of energy plants, airports, or rail hubs could paralyze entire regions. A barrage over the Baltic capitals or Poland's transport corridors could cause chaos long before reinforcements from NATO arrived. And Russia is not standing still. Its engineers are experimenting with artificial intelligence to guide swarms more intelligently, allowing drones to coordinate like a flock of birds, shifting paths mid-flight to confuse defenses. New variants are being tested. Smaller drones that can slip through radar nets, faster models designed to dive at infrastructure, even underwater drones to threaten ports and shipping. Each innovation forces Europe to adapt, stretching the limits of its technology and budgets. For the Kremlin, drones are not just weapons, but symbols. Every time a Shahed slips past Ukrainian defenses and strikes its target, Moscow sends a message. Russia can reach you, no matter how strong you think you are. And in Brussels, Berlin, and Helsinki, officials know the same message could one day be aimed at them. That is why the drone wall is being built with such urgency. Europe has seen what happens when cities are left exposed. It has watched Ukraine burn under the weight of nightly drone strikes. The fear is simple and chilling. If Moscow decides to test NATO's defenses with the same swarms, the skies of Eastern Europe could look no different from Kyiv's, unless the wall holds. In Brussels, the project is hailed as a symbol of unity, but behind closed doors, the drone wall is also exposing Europe's deepest divisions. For nations on the eastern flank, Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, Poland, and Finland, the threat feels immediate and existential. They push for rapid construction, faster funding, and deployment at any cost. "We don't have the luxury of time," one Baltic minister declared. "If Russia tests our skies tomorrow, we must be ready today." Further west, the urgency fades. Countries like France, Spain, and Italy see the project as necessary, but worry about the price tag. Billions of euros are being poured into radars, interceptors, and electronic warfare systems, even as economic strains grow at home. Some ask whether Europe is building a shield that will protect all, or just the frontier states closest to Russia. The arguments ripple through the halls of the European Parliament. Is this true collective defense, or another division between East and West inside the Union? NATO's role adds another layer of complexity. Officially, the alliance supports the drone wall, framing it as complementary to NATO's integrated air defense. But whispers in Washington raise questions. Will Europe's wall reduce reliance on U.S. forces, or simply duplicate what NATO already provides. Some American officials quietly wonder if Europe is trying to show that it can stand on its own, signaling a future where it does not depend entirely on Washington's shield. Others fear that if the wall fails, NATO will be dragged into a confrontation unprepared. For the EU, the drone wall has become more than a military project. It is a political statement. It says to Moscow, "We will not wait for you to strike us." It says to Washington, "We are willing to defend ourselves." And it says to Europeans themselves, "The war in Ukraine is not far away. It is here, at our border, and we must prepare." But with every bold declaration comes a shadow of doubt. Can the wall really deliver on its promise? Military analysts caution that a determined Russia could still overwhelm it. Drone swarms can be built faster and cheaper than Europe can intercept them. Electronic warfare can be countered. Radars can be blinded. A barrier stretching thousands of kilometers may protect in theory, but in practice, its weakest link could be all Moscow needs to exploit. The risk is that the drone wall becomes more symbol than shield, an expensive monument to Europe's fear, impressive on paper, but fragile under pressure. And if that illusion shatters in the heat of conflict, the political fallout could be as devastating as any missile. The choice now facing Europe is stark. Invest everything into making the drone wall real and resilient, or admit that no wall, however advanced, can stop Russia alone. Either way, the future of the continent's security is being decided not in speeches, but in the skies above its eastern frontier. Along the forests of Finland, across the plains of Poland, and down to the Baltic coast, the new frontier hums with unseen energy. Towers glow in the night, radars sweeping the skies. Drones hover silently above villages and fields, their cameras and sensors scanning for threats that may come tomorrow. It is called the drone wall, and it stands as Europe's boldest gamble, an invisible shield against Moscow's reach. But the question that hangs heavy over this vast project is whether it is truly a wall, or merely the illusion of one. No defense is perfect. No technology stands still. Russia has already proven its willingness to unleash swarms, to overwhelm, to adapt. And in the endless race between offense and defense, the side with cheaper, faster machines often holds the advantage. Europe is betting billions that its shield can withstand the storm, but the storm is already gathering. For those who live near the frontier, the drone wall is not just strategy, it is survival. Parents in Riga, soldiers in Warsaw, families in Tallinn, they look east and know that safety depends on systems they cannot see, on drones they will never touch, on a defense that must work perfectly every time. Because if it fails even once, the skies above their homes could look like the skies of Kiev, lit by fire and broken by the sound of engines. And so Europe waits, building its wall in haste, declaring that it will not be caught unprepared. Yet in the silence behind every speech, a darker question lingers. When Moscow decides to test this wall, will it stand firm, or will it crack, exposing the continent to the very nightmare it was built to prevent? What do you think? Will the drone wall protect Europe, or will Russia find a way to break through? Tell us, because the answer may decide not only the future of Europe, but the future of war itself.